Govan, who? What? Good afternoon, everybody. It's Tuesday, September 23rd, 4:30 in the afternoon. This is Frank with Iron Age News from the South Florida Conservative News Service. And before you get into the late night shows tonight, Jimmy Kimmel is supposed to be back. His pact with Satan intact and continuing. But we're going to discuss what it is that really is going on there and why Disney slash ABC bringing Kimmel back for whatever the reason will eventually help to put one more nail in the coffin of their corporation. Kimmel will not last, nor will the corporate structure over at Disney slash ABC. And before we say what it is that was going on and this and that and the other thing, here are the actual things, because you're going to hear a lot of different stuff about what Jimmy Kimmel said and Jimmy Kimmel did, much as you do with everybody else. But we would like to be accurate when we are discussing the enemies of democracy. So, what it is that he said, September 15th, his opening monologue, Kimmel said, "We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid," meaning the shooter, "who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them, and doing everything they can to score political points from it." He also mocked Donald Trump's reaction, especially a moment when Trump, during a press query segment, pointed out White House construction on the new ballroom as part of his response when asked how he was doing after Charlie Kirk's death. Kimmel compared Trump's reaction to somebody going through grief stages, saying, "Yes, he's at the fourth stage of grief, construction, but I'm bumped." And later, "This is not how an adult grieves the murder of someone he called a friend. This is how a 4-year-old mourns a goldfish." Those are the two statements that were brought up by Jimmy Kimmel that are completely and 100% attributed to him. There's some other nuanced things, but we would rather stick with the real, stick with the truth around here in the United States in 2025 and see where that's going to get you. So we'll break it down into two parts. First and foremost, of course, is going to be what would we say? How are we going to do this? We'll deal with the First Amendment farce that is going on here with Disney and Kimmel and the manipulation of truth. And once again, we'll just go through it so that you see where we're coming from. September 23rd, 2025, ABC and Disney announced a reinstatement of Jimmy Kimmel Live after a short hiatus sparked by a storm of controversy. Kimmel had gone on air and delivered patently untrue statements about the man responsible for the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Affiliate broadcasters led by Sinclair, they should be applauded for this, actually, balked at the reckless rhetoric and pulled the plug on the Kimmel show. We would not carry it. Sinclair has about 30 plus outlets around the country. There was an additional company that has another, I think, 20 some. So you were going to lose 50 outlets as of that day. So they pulled the show. Yet after several days of aggressive lobbying from Hollywood elites, none of which have a financial stake, by the way, in the show. All these people that you see, oh, I stand with him, I do this, or I would do that. None of them have a financial stake in the show. None of them had a financial stake in Disney or ABC. If you noticed, it wasn't like it was a bunch of people who worked on any of the Disney shows. It was just your generic lefty actors and stuff like this. But Disney needed that because Disney, being woke, wanted to have it so that they could say Disney caved to pressure and placed Kimmel back in his chair. And they did so under the banner of the First Amendment. And this is the problem with it. The Kimmel affair is never, if you listen to what I just told you, and I'll put that in the comment section of what he said. What he said and what the First Amendment would imply, this is where his problem is. The Kimmel affair, as I said, was never a simple free speech issue. His words were not just misinformed comedy, right? Some of the Trump stuff he could have said, but not the things on the shooter. They echoed the behavior of the man who, at the scene of the Kirk assassination, pretended to be the shooter, right? Remember that guy, the old guy who deliberately wasted police time and resources saying, I'm the killer, arrest me. So they arrested him, and that gave the killer valuable time to escape. He also admitted that he said that to give the killer time to escape. Kimmel's broadcast, repeating and magnifying falsehoods similar to what he said, did the same at the national level. It clouded the public's view, the public narrative, and threatened to slow down the search for a fugitive assassin. If everybody's looking for a conservative such and such a person, they're going to look in certain places. If you're looking for a lefty trans whatever, you're going to look elsewhere. By Kimmel saying what he said, he is in my mind, no less guilty than the old guy who was at the site and said he was the shooter and screwed up the police investigation. Kimmel used his position as a national, whoever watches this shit, national talk show host to misinform the American public during the time of a crisis. We didn't know if there were more shooters. We didn't know if there were bombers. Remember, there was a bomb that was tried to set off, right? So look at it that way. That's how it has to be looked at, regardless of what Disney's going to tell you. The First Amendment protects a wide range of expression, even speech that is offensive or inaccurate, okay? But it has never shielded speech integral to a crime. Just as a false 911 call is not protected speech, knowingly disseminating false information that obstructs an investigation is not mere comedy or commentary. There's been a lot of shit lately, if you notice, with these guys that say they're comedians, but they're actually just left-wing pundits, but they hide under comedy. This using comedy as a shield is yet an additional trick of socialism to cover itself and protect itself from exposure. All right. Disney's legal shield is the familiar refrain on this is, we may not like what Kimmel said, but the Constitution protects it, right? Sounds noble, but it is a distortion. Free speech does not protect someone who, with a platform of millions, deliberately spreads misinformation in a way that could hinder the pursuit of a murderer, right? Or later on, the prosecution of a murderer, because they could use his statements saying, hey, the news people said that they were looking for a right-wing guy. This guy is far from right-wing, by poisoning the jury pool, right? That is not art. That is not satire. It is inference. He has always been a coward in the way he operates. He is a passive-aggressive piece of shit. It's been embarrassing to watch him over the years because I don't watch him. He's already been on other people's shows, but it's this self-hating, he hates himself at the same time he's doing this stuff by trying to bring people down to his shit level in life, right? I don't know what Sarah Silverman did to him during their relationship, but he was a tolerable human being, supposedly. And then whatever went on with her afterwards, he was just a total piece of garbage. Okay. That's just what I hear. I could be wrong. Could be wrong. Pegging. But the Sinclair affiliates acted responsibly in refusing to air Kimmel's show after the falsehoods. They recognized their own liability and their duty to the truth. You got to like businessmen standing on business. Liability. They hear that word, they're like, whoa, right? Disney, on the other hand, has chosen to wrap itself in constitutional cloth, which is a joke. If you remember when they fired Gina Carano for a possibly right-wing based tweet years ago, and have effectively kept her out of the entertainment industry ever since, right? You don't see her doing too many Marvel movies or anything. And, they're using this excuse about the pressure from Hollywood peers and all this. They were looking for excuses to get her back on. It's politics. The decision reveals a cynical calculation, which is that the public will accept First Amendment as an all-purpose shield, and the prosecutors will not take the politically risky step of treating Kimmel's conduct as obstruction. But that calculation does not erase the real damage. law enforcement efforts were muddied. The truth is blurred, and this could play some minor part in later legalities. The killer of Charlie Kirk was handed a fog of cover. Okay. If you have other questions about, well, we'll talk about it in a minute. So it's worth stating plainly, if intent could be proven, if Kimmel went on there on the television and said what he said to try to, once again, help the killer escape, help the killer be found, whatever, he would possibly meet elements of obstruction of justice, providing false information, or civil defamation. Okay. If he had, let's say, said, well, if, let's say he said they were a member of some political party, which he almost did, hoping that Kirk's people who are not 100% in one camp or the other would lash out. That's kind of what I was trying to see. Was he trying to get the Kirk people to lash out at something? Well, we've gotten past that point, luckily, with Charlie's wife, as I mentioned in another video that we had already put out. These are not far-fetched hypotheticals. This is real categories of liability that ordinary citizens would face every day for lesser acts. So the reinstatement of Kimmel's show signals something dangerous. It tells America that you are powerful enough, wealthy enough, and politically aligned with the cultural left. You can disguise even the most damaging falsehoods as free speech. Meanwhile, ordinary citizens are being fined, arrested, or sued for less. What occurred throughout the entire Biden administration, right? 4 years of rampaging, crazy law enforcement. This hypocrisy undermines public faith not only in the media, but the First Amendment itself, which is one of the key targets of a left-wing takeover, is to destroy the meaning of the First Amendment. So once it becomes meaningless, you won't miss it when it's gone. The right to speak freely is sacred, but when it weaponizes to shield obstruction and misinformation, it ceases to be a principle and becomes a tool of manipulation. Okay, so that's what we're talking about there. We're talking about the issue where who knows what Kimmel's going to say tonight. Knowing the punk ass that he is going to think that he got away with it because he has big friends. His big friend, Disney, on the other hand, has a whole other issue going on here, which is the gambit that they used to free Jimmy Kimmel. Those of you who want to understand the real dynamics behind Disney and ABC and Disney and everything else that it does, there's a show called Overlord DVD. He mostly does Hollywood Insider stuff. And if you follow any of his, especially around the time of the Star Wars issues, billions of dollars were lost to these stupid woke programs that Disney was involved in because they could not get rid of certain people in key positions. And it was driving the company into bankruptcy. One of the most solvent companies out there lost billions of dollars and say, well, they can make it right back. No, they can't, because they've been pissing on the core characters of their brand. Once you destroy your base in a thing like that, you get rid of Mickey Mouse and all that. When's the last time any of you, on a similar note, when's the last time any of you saw a Bugs Bunny cartoon show available on any channel? Because they were considered woke, they got taken off, and Warner Brothers walked right away from them, right? So now we're going to talk a little bit real quick about the Disney gamble on this one, because this is the business side, which is a business disaster in the making. Okay. Siding with Kimmel over the affiliates and a significant swath of its own audience who also doesn't want Kimmel back, Disney has put itself on a collision course with its subscribers, parents, partners, and shareholders. As I said, most of the people that you are seeing that protested against Disney from Hollywood do not have anything to do financially or contractually with the Disney shows that are out there, with the Disney brand that is out there. All right. The reports have already suggested a surge in subscription cancellations for Disney's streaming services and channels. So Disney's relied on its direct-to-consumer arm, which is Disney, ESPN, and Hulu to offset declining cable revenues. But now political and cultural controversies are driving away families who saw Disney as a neutral brand for entertainment. You've seen that now with this and with other things. ESPN in itself is a shit show. I wouldn't let anybody under the age of 20 watch that nightmare, right? So Kimmel's reinstatement has only accelerated that erosion. Parents don't want their household streaming dollars underwriting a comedian who distorts the facts of a political assassination. The cancellations aren't symbolic. They're hitting Disney at its bottom line in a sector they were supposed to be the company's growth engine. Streaming is going to be the thing for the next X amount of years. And if you have already alienated the mom and pop kettles of the planet, who is it that's going to pay for this stuff? Most of the people, the griping types that are involved in this, the justice warriors, they don't pay for shit. Either their parents are paying for it or they're watching it free through somebody's hack service. Disney's not making a damn dime on that. So it's got its show back. Disney's put Kimmel back on the air. It cannot force the affiliates to carry him. Sinclair and the other broadcasters have already said, we don't want to show the show. We have reputational problems and public outcry. They're going to hit us where we live. This is all tactics that were brought about by the left over the last 6 years and are now coming home to roost where they belong. Don't cry. Don't cry mother or whatever when the going gets tough there, you little communists. This is exactly what happens with cancel culture. And now you are being canceled. You went a bridge too far with your cosplay. And now, since you didn't want to listen, you have to feel. So, like I said, he may be back, but this is going to eventually lead to what we would consider to be commercially suicidal. The Disney stockholders have already endured years of declining returns. As I said, the Star Wars sequel trilogy alienated its core fan base. I don't even watch any of this shit anymore. I don't even have and then Mark Hamill being a dick also didn't help, right? Buzz Lightyear, the movie, was so bad, nobody saw that thing, and that cost a fortune. And Disney continues to bleed cash despite constant promises of a turnaround. Now, this is another cost distraction, Kimmel, because they're going to cling to this agenda. Disney's management is gambling shareholder equity on political theater. At what point will institutional investors or activist funds step in to demand accountability? When will the board of directors face the question, how many billions of dollars do we have to burn before this ideology yields to a fiduciary duty, right? That's where they're at. And if I had had 5 million shares like Will Eisner or all these guys, I would be kicking somebody's ass every day since this started, going back to Disney's time, you know? And like I said, it's Disney's greatest asset is its brand. It's not the Jimmy Kimmel show. It's the duck and the mouse and all the other shit and the Little Mermaid and all these things. But now that you have associated yourself so much more tightly with things that would hate the duck and the mouse and the Little Mermaid, it makes it very hard for your parents to go out and put a show on, which is going to probably turn the kid into a monster 3 to 4 years after they've been watching the viewership. No one wants to have to sit through these moronic children's shows with their kid just to make sure they're not being brainwashed. And that's where you're going to be at. Expect the slide to continue. I think they've dropped, I'd have to look at the stock again, but expect the slide to continue for a while, especially if Sinclair decides to stay with it. If there are other vultures out there who are short sellers or something like that, I think I have the right term, they could do a run. They could actually run on Disney right now. And it would make them some money because they're on the way down. They've made the wrong decision with Kimmel. Tonight, Kimmel is not going to go on the show and apologize. I will bet $1. I have $1 here somewhere that I will get out of our funds, out of this South Florida conservative vault, and I will put $1 up against everybody else's $5,000 that Kimmel does not apologize, that Kimmel comes out like a punk bitch and tries to double down on it, thinking that he's got a First Amendment issue, which honestly, as I said, I believe what was said for pure disinformation value, which makes him even worse than just being a mindless shill for the left. But you decide what you want to decide. We're not here to tell you what to think. We're here to give you as much information as possible. So that's all we have for this for right now. You have a good evening, and I will talk to you later on.